Everything begins by meeting our protagonist, Elmer, and his mother, nicknamed La China. After a night of partying, his mother has an argument with her boyfriend, Tony. Her jealousy after seeing him with another woman leads her to consume substances and drive in the middle of the night with her young son. Due to a moment of distraction, she crashes into a tree. The fatal accident causes the woman to lose one of her legs, while Elmer, who hit his head, suffers damage to the cortex of his frontal lobe, which results in him losing the ability to experience any emotions such as joy, sadness, fear, love, among others. Years later, we see Elmer as a full-grown adult who has become a contract criminal. He carries out these jobs in complicity with his mother. Both use their gardening business as a cover to divert attention. This also allows them to bury the bodies and plant vegetation over each grave. Elmer, who is a gardening enthusiast, creates incredibly creative plant islands over each victim's burial site, since it is scientifically proven that the human body retains numerous nutrients for plants even after death. Detectives Torres and Carrera are now investigating the disappearance of Anton, the latest victim of our protagonists. They investigate the last place where Anton was seen and interrogate his wife. The woman doesn't seem too worried about her husband's disappearance, but still answers all of Detective Carrera's questions. Hours later, we see Anton's wife arriving at the protagonist's greenhouse, where she has a conversation with La China, handing her the payment for having taken care of Anton, since he used to beat both her and their young son. Elmer's mother saves the money in a box where she has been saving up to return to Mexico, and buy back the house where they used to live. With great devotion, she prays at a shrine filled with photos of their past victims. One afternoon, while inspecting her greenhouse, La China is visited by a woman named Sabila, who has a very personal job for her. Sabila is willing to pay a large sum in exchange for the disappearance of the person responsible for the death of her only son. La China accepts the deal and immediately informs her son that there is a new assignment. Elmer refuses at first, feeling it's too soon to commit another crime, but his mother insists, mentioning that this will be their final illegal job. As with the payment, they will finally return to Mexico. Without wasting any time, Elmer begins to investigate his next target, a girl named Violetta. Our protagonist checks her social media accounts, the places she usually frequents, her workplace, and even follows her around for several days. During that time, Elmer starts experiencing blurred vision and feeling slightly unwell. In the middle of an interview with his mother, he suddenly runs away and collapses a few blocks away. To his surprise, it is Violetta who comes to his aid. Elmer becomes captivated by the girl and, for the first time since his childhood accident, he begins to feel emotions again. Upon returning home, his mother questions him about why he disappeared during the interview. Elmer explains that he hasn't been feeling well, so his mother suggests scheduling a medical appointment. After watching an emotional movie, Elmer locks himself in his room, overwhelmed by the emotions that are now flooding in, emotions he hadn't felt in years. A few days later, during an award ceremony honoring his outstanding work in gardening, Elmer runs into Violetta, who had seen his picture in a newspaper and decided to attend the event. Their interaction does not sit well with his mother, who wastes no time scolding him, reminding him that he cannot get too close to someone who is their target. Elmer suggests that it would be better to abandon the assignment and choose another target, but La China refuses, arguing that they would have to. La China insists much more, urging Elmer to complete the job so they can finally return to Mexico. She repeatedly asks him to follow through with the task so they can secure the money Sabila is offering. Elmer eventually agrees, and the next day, he's ready to carry out the job. Our protagonist follows Violetta, who's out for a walk with her dog in the woods. After a brief conversation, Elmer prepares the substance he plans to use to take Violetta's life. However, just as he's about to do it, she kisses him, causing Elmer to back out of the assignment because he's fallen in love. Now, Violetta and Elmer spend time together. Oh, of happiness, something he's never experienced before, since he's never been in love. While enjoying a romantic evening, they are interrupted by a man named Mon, who accuses Violetta of being responsible for the death of his best friend, her ex-boyfriend. The situation grows tense until Elmer steps in to defend her. Still, Violetta, feeling embarrassed by the awkward encounter, decides to leave. Elmer, now filled with anger towards the man who interrupted them, searches for him and vents all his frustration, sending him to the afterlife. Unlike with his other crimes, This time Elmer makes a few mistakes because the emotions overwhelm him, leading him to drop a gardening tool. When he returns home, his mother asks if he has finished with the girl, but Elmer lies, telling her there were too many people in the woods, so he couldn't do it. However, when La China checks the van from the nursery, she discovers that Elmer has brought back a man's body. Elmer tries to explain, claiming the man was someone he had an altercation with, and his anger got the best of him. Surprised, La China tells him that this can't be possible because he's not supposed to feel anything. La China is shocked when Elmer reveals that, due to his discomfort, he is now able to experience emotions. The detectives arrive at the last scene where Mon was seen, and there they find a piece that the gardener dropped without noticing. Meanwhile, Elmer is scolded by his mother, who has learned that he killed Mon after an argument with Violetta. During their heated discussion, Elmer begins to feel unwell again and is taken to the hospital. After conducting some tests, the doctors inform him that he has a small tumor in his head, which has been causing the dizziness he's experienced, as well as the behavioral changes. In other words, it's the tumor that is now making him experience emotions. The doctor advises that Elmer undergo a treatment to remove the tumor, as if left untreated, it could grow and lead to his death. However, Elmer refuses to undergo surgery because it would take away his newly discovered emotions. His mother disagrees because his life is in danger, and after some discussion, they reach an agreement. Elmer asks her to call off the job so that Violetta won't be hurt, and in exchange, he will agree to the surgery. The girl is intercepted by the detectives who are investigating Mon's disappearance. There, Violetta tells them that ever since her ex took his own life, she's been blamed because she ended the relationship. The detectives, in response, ask her for the name of anyone who was with her the day she argued with Mon. So Violetta has no choice but to give them Elmer's information, as he witnessed everything. The China goes in search of Sibila to make her call off the plan to kill Violetta, but the woman refuses and offers her double the amount of money she had already given, something Elmer's mother ends up accepting. Violetta returns to Elmer, and the boy, not wanting anything bad to happen to her, asks her to cut off all communication because it's the best thing for both of them. The detectives interrogate our protagonist about what happened with Mon. He answers their questions convincingly, accompanied by his mother, who confirms his alibi. When they return home, Elmer informs his mother that he doesn't want to continue with the deal they made and would prefer to live the way he feels about Violetta, choosing not to undergo surgery so that he can keep experiencing emotions. It is revealed that years ago, the China decided to resume her relationship with Tony, accepting him into her home, something that Elmer agreed to. However, living together became a nightmare, and the China could no longer do anything to get Tony to leave. Seeing his mother in that situation, Elmer used his knowledge of plants to create a deadly poison. He injected this poison into Tony to finally get rid of him. Since that day, everything changed for mother and son. They began using the substance to take on contract jobs for money, burying the bodies in their garden so that no one would ever find them. Returning to the present, the China, unwilling to lose her son, decides to take matters into her own hands and kill Violetta. She sets up a plan but fails to carry it out. Seeing other options, she decides to grind up the pills from Elmer's treatment, mixes everything into his food without him noticing, as once he finishes the treatment, he will be ready to undergo surgery. The detectives, in their investigation, find more victims who have disappeared without leaving any trace. With all this information, they are sure that they are dealing with a serial killer who attacks his victims and completely makes them disappear. Elmer and Violetta have a romantic date. After spending an evening where they talk a little about their lives, they let themselves be carried away by their feelings. During their romance, Elmer realizes that he has stopped feeling some emotions, which has prevented him from enjoying his first time. Angry, he returns home and confronts his mother for giving him the treatment pills without his consent, as the pills are the only thing that could have caused what is happening to him. His mother, in response, only defends her actions, saying that she's doing it for his own good, something Elmer rejects, shouting at her that she has broken the trust he had in her. Violetta is now being accused by Mon's family, who leave graffiti outside her apartment, a situation that leads her into depression because she believes she always attracts troubled people into her life. This causes her to start avoiding meeting with Elmer. The boy does everything possible to make plans to be together, but Violetta prefers to give excuses and go out with her friends. This is taken advantage of by the China, who starts feeding ideas to her son that his feelings are unreturned, taking advantage of the fact that he has no experience with relationships. One afternoon, Sibila, upon seeing Violetta in the street, decides to steal her pet in order to lure her toward her. Violetta goes to her mansion, and in exchange for returning her pet, Sabila agrees to tell her exactly what happened that night when her son, Swan, died. The girl reveals that night, when they left the nightclub, Swan insisted on taking her in the car. They had an altercation because Swan couldn't accept that their relationship was over. After stopping at the bridge, the boy, he threatened to throw himself off the bridge, to which she challenged him, saying he wasn't capable of doing it. When Swan tried to move to safety, he ended up falling, and there was nothing she could do to save him. Sabila doesn't believe her, but still, she gives her the pet. Upon returning to her apartment, Violetta has a conversation with her friend, where it's revealed that the girl indeed pushed Swan off the bridge. After arguing, Sabila gives the China an ultimatum to complete the job for which she had already paid. The threat is that if she doesn't do it, she will report everything to the police. Meanwhile, the detectives continue to follow Anthon's wife, who visits Elmer's mother. They begin to make connections and are more convinced that our protagonists are the ones responsible for the recent disappearances. After being avoided several times, Elmer ends up with a broken heart when he sees Violetta kissing someone else. After several days of suffering from love and under his mother's care, Elmer decides to go back to the task of ending Violetta's life and continuing with the treatment needed for his operation. While leaving the niche of his first love, he receives a call from Violetta, asking him to talk so she can apologize for her behavior. After much insistence, our protagonist finally agrees to meet her. This is to fulfill Sabila's request. The detectives decide to follow Elmer because they want to catch him red-handed. When the expected encounter happens between the two lovebirds, Elmer declines to end Violetta's life. She apologizes and they reconcile. The detectives fail in their attempt, as Elmer and Violetta spend the night together, showering each other with love. This situation undoubtedly angers the China because the job was never carried out, and Elmer has changed his mind again. Detective Carrera, suspecting that the bodies of the missing people might be buried beneath the plants, infiltrates to take some photographs in the islands of our protagonists. With ultraviolet light sprayed on the plants, she confirms her theory that the victims are buried in their greenhouse. On the other hand, Elmer, more in love than ever, wants to ensure that Violetta won't be hurt. Thus, he decides to end Sabila's life because by doing so, not only would his girl be safe, but also he and his mother, since she wouldn't report them. After a struggle with Sabila that leaves him with a chest wound, Elmer asks Violetta for help, and she lovingly treats his injuries. The next day, Violetta learns from her friend that Elmer had been hanging around Isabella's house, where she has now been found dead. The girl, upon finding an earring from her former mother-in-law in Elmer's clothes, confirms that her boyfriend is a criminal. Without thinking twice, she packs all her belongings to move elsewhere. On her way, while taking a break, she is kidnapped by a man hired by the China, intending to send her to a better place. Violetta manages to escape and then mercilessly ends the man's life. At that moment, she receives a call from the China, leading her to discover who hired the man. The detectives, with a search warrant, go to our protagonist's house. The China receives them without fear, as by the time they arrive, she had already dug up the bodies and dumped them into the sea, thus freeing herself from any accusations. Elmer answers Violetta's call, finding her in shock. The girl confronts him, and Elmer reveals the work he does with his mother, explaining that she had hired them, but he fell in love with her after cleaning up the crime scene, making it appear as though the man had an accident. Elmer takes Violetta back to her car. On the way, the guy reveals to her that they were 11 victims, and since he met her, everything changed in him, as it is the first time he has fallen in love. Violetta thanks him for his help, and they both say goodbye to go their separate ways. The detectives are scolded by their superiors due to their failed raid, as they acted on their own and didn't delegate to the homicide department as they should have. Elmer returns home to confront his mother, telling her that all this time, she has only cared about money. The China takes advantage of her son's carelessness to knock him out and take him for surgery. Her mission is successful, and after the tumor is removed, Elmer stops feeling emotions. Upon recovery, the relationship with his mother is no longer the same because of what she did to him. While he continues to work in his nursery, Violetta reappears in his life, asking him to help her get rid of someone. Elmer doesn't hesitate and agrees to help her. And that's how the story ends. Tell me in the comments what you thought of this new series, and if you liked this video, don't forget to leave your beautiful like and subscribe to the channel.